Hi, my name is Andre Bester. You're joining me on This Is What We Were Told. In Genesis 6, the Bible says that God was sorry that He had made humans. He decided to wipe out everything on earth by way of a global flood. And then, in a strange twist of irony, God decided that He was going to spare 8 humans and at least one male and female pair of every animal kind on earth. The humans to be spared were Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives. Noah was to build a monstrous ship, an ark, which was to ride out the flood. Aboard the ark was to be Noah, his wife, his 3 sons and their wives, together with all the male and female pairs of animals that God would bring to the ark before the flood was to begin. Of course, Noah was also to make sure that there was enough food on board for each and every living thing. Now consider this. Noah's instructions were to take on board animals from across the entire globe. Noah would not have been aware of the existence of most of those animals because there simply was no reason why he would have seen any of them or heard about their existence prior to the flood. There was, for example, no reason why he would have known about the existence of the 2-toed sloth or the Japanese snow monkey. So I'm not sure how Noah was supposed to calculate the feeding requirements of animals that he hadn't even been aware existed. This is just another of those incomprehensible anomalies in the book of Genesis. But let's give Noah the benefit of the doubt. Let's assume God gave him the calculations. The animal kingdom as we know it consists of millions of very diverse species. Species are mostly geographically confined. This means that specific species generally occur naturally in specific geographical areas. Anacondas do not flourish in the polar regions, just as polar bears do not thrive too well in the Australian outback. Different geographical and climatic conditions lend themselves to the survival of different animal species. Therefore, most of the animal life forms that supposedly made it onto the ark must undoubtedly have endured epic journeys from their natural habitats to all timeously reach the assembly point from where they were to board the ark. Imagine, for example, the journey that the raccoons and caribou had to undertake to get to the ark. Occurring naturally on the North American continent, they would have had to swim or drift across the Atlantic. Alternatively, they would have had to wait for an ice bridge to form over the Bering Strait so that they could walk across into Asia and further west to the Middle East. But this is nothing compared to the journey the koalas and kangaroos would have had to complete. Occurring naturally only in Australia, they would not have had the luxury of an ice bridge of any kind. They would only have been able to drift or swim across the Indian Ocean to get to the Middle East. The various species of lemur from Madagascar would have faced the same plight. There are no elephants, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses or giraffes naturally occurring in the Middle East, so they all would have had to cross thousands of kilometers of wide open spaces, deserts and mountains to get to the ark. In the same way, millions of other animals, birds, insects and other creepy crawlies would have had to swim, drift, fly or run over vast, inhospitable expanses to get to the ark on time. Of course, it's not impossible for animals to make ocean crossings by drifting on floating material. In fact, this is a natural occurring phenomenon by way of which foreign species are introduced to habitable land. However, mass ocean crossings simultaneously occurring all over the globe and all headed for the same geographical location? That seems just too much a stretch of the imagination, even if we're talking about Ice Age conditions. Nevertheless, let's assume for the sake of argument that each and every animal did respond to some inexplicable urge to migrate to the Middle East. Let's assume they all managed to find some way or another to journey across ragged mountains, raging rivers, God-forsaken deserts, windswept ice fields, and endless oceans. Let's assume they all managed to arrive at the ark just in time to get on board and escape drowning. Let's assume they all survived the long months during which they were sealed shut, adrift in a wooden vessel perhaps a quarter the size of the Titanic. However improbable this scenario may be, let's assume that it all happened exactly as it is stated. This means that at the end of Genesis 8 verse 19, all the animals that were on board the ark would have exited the ark at the same time at the very same address. They would all have had a fresh start at the very same time, at the very same geographical location. Now, this is a critically important juncture in the story of the Great Flood, and we dare not overlook its significance. If we are to believe the story of the Great Flood as a historical reality, the fact that all the animals exited the ark at the same time, at the same address, must be reconcilable with what we find in the natural world today. In other words, what we see in the natural world today should confirm that all the animals exited the ark at the same time, at the same address. And this is where things get interesting. Logic dictates that from the point of exiting the ark, there could have been only one of two scenarios that would have played out in respect of repopulation of the earth. Either all the animals could have remained in more or less the same locality of the ark and slowly but surely spread out and filled the earth as their numbers increased, or the animals could all have embarked on their treacherous, life-threatening journeys back to their original natural habitats. If all the animals remained in the same locality of the ark and just continued increasing in numbers, one may expect to find a high level of randomness in the occurrence of animal species across the globe. In other words, all species that disembarked from the ark should be found in more or less the same merry mix everywhere across the globe, regardless of what their original habitat might have been before the flood. One should be able to find flocks of emperor penguins on the Greek beaches and American elk on the banks of the River Nile. Now come on, we already know that randomness in the occurrence of species is definitely not the case. We know that animal species are very particular when it comes to the geographical and climatic conditions ideal for their survival. Walrus will not survive in a tropical climate, just as platypus numbers will drop in polar conditions. Our present understanding of ecosystems and habitation forces us to conclude that the animal voyagers must somehow have traced back their steps to the various natural habitats from which they originally came. In other words, the animals that came from Australia somehow had to catch a ride back. Their options would have been limited to swimming or drifting. The same would apply to species from Madagascar, the North and South American continents, and the polar regions. What are the probabilities that those animals swam? None whatsoever. No land-dwelling animal would survive an ocean crossing by swimming. That leaves us with the possibility of drifting across the oceans on floating debris. What are the odds that millions of animals, all of them arranged into pairs of male and female, departing at the same time from the same location and all heading in different directions, all caught a number of rides on some conveniently available flotsam? I'd hate to say it is impossible, but sorry, this doesn't happen. And please don't tell me that for God nothing is impossible. I've said this ad nauseam in the past. If God wasn't a God, He would not have been able to perform any miracles. All gods are considered to be gods because they can perform miracles. You do not expect a God to be incapable of performing miracles. So ultimately, it is almost by impulse that one would be tempted to say that for your God nothing is impossible. But go check the records. Your God is only one of hundreds of others who are all presented as equally able. Your statement about your God's ability does not make it a factual truth, particularly when all the facts point to an incontrovertibly different reality. But it's not only the idea of millions of animals all catching different rides back from the ark to their original habitats that's utterly preposterous. Here's another thought. The richness of diversity in the animal kingdom and the vulnerability of balance between specific species and specific conditions in the biosphere in which they live make it practically impossible in the aftermath of an event like a year-long global flood for species to simply return to their habitats that they've been surviving in since the dawn of time, and to resume the normal rhythm of their existence. A flood of the magnitude described in Genesis would have destroyed the entire course of existence of species, irreparably wiping out delicately balanced natural conditions and prohibiting species from resuming their existence in the habitats from which they were taken. This makes the story of mass migration of representatives from the entire animal kingdom, from all over the globe to the ark and back, simply incredible. Friends, on this channel I talk about issues of faith and religion that seriously challenged my belief in the integrity of the Bible. In 2020 I published a book on my spiritual journey called This Is What We Were Told. My book is aimed at challenging people to dare to look beyond the limitations of religious belief and to take in the bigger picture of the wonder of life. I provide some food for thought for others who might be finding themselves in a spiritual dead end and who are searching for a more meaningful understanding of the world in which we live. On this channel, I'm giving viewers a taste of the topics I cover in my book. On this channel and through my book, I aim to awaken people to the wonders of life playing out right around us, just beyond the boundaries of faith. So if you're interested in a copy of my book, please mail me at the address on the screen and I'll be in touch. Have a lovely day.